Testing. Well, welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. That's right, FAR. This is the Friday FARcast. I'm Robert Phoenix. And sorry for the delay, but we are here now. It's hard running a media empire when you're a single dad. It's challenging. Getting some tweets over here on Facebook, and I got to shut it down. Just shut it down just a little bit here. Gotta click that. There we go. Hey, what's happening, everybody? Robert Phoenix coming at you live on the 9th of June. Jupiter is getting ready to go direct. How about that? And we got a full moon in Sagittarius, which we're going to be talking a little bit about today and what the effects of the full moon are. And of course, that full moon is down in Donald Trump's fourth house, which is where he has his full moon in Sagittarius with Saturn, transiting Saturn on that full moon. Life at home has been rough for the president-elect, or life at home, not home, right? So if you look at it, it's kind of an interesting exercise in understanding astrology. Now remember, the moon is the home. Technically speaking, any sign that it's in the moon is the home. It's the type of home or the type of relatability or connectedness to home, where the moon shows up, what sign it's in, but it's still the home, right? It's funny because I've had these readings in the past where they kind of classify you as an entity, right? And I was classified as a wanderer. And that makes a lot of sense. I've never felt entirely rooted to this planet. To be honest with you, although I do have a son and I do have responsibilities and bills to pay just like everybody else, but my moon is in the 11th house. So if that's the moon, right, is our home, and I've got my moon in the 11th house, it's a very wandering kind of, very social sort of moon. Not a vagrant moon, but it's an 11th house moon, which makes it a little non-traditional in some ways because the 11th house is Aquarius' house. So but that's what we know about the moon. The moon represents, how you relate, who you relate with emotionally, and as it relates to the home and the mother. Okay, so Trump has his moon in the fourth house, which means that his mother probably played a larger role in his life than his father. Although with Sun in the 10th house, clearly the father has played a very significant role. But the mother, with the moon in the fourth, creates the emotional foundation for one Donald J. Trump. Hold on a second. Okay, sorry about that. We had a bit of a thing there. Hold on one second. So getting on a roll. Oh my God. This is torture. Hold on. Okay. So it's the moon in the fourth house, which provides the emotional foundation for Trump. The father, the Sun in the 10th, provides the career path. And of course, it's in Gemini, and you get the true node conjunction and Uranus. So there's, I wouldn't call it dubious, but we know that there is a lot of fast action that's always taken place in Trump's life. And that's up there in the 10th house. So when we have Saturn transiting the fourth house, which is the home, and there's the moon in Sagittarius, what is Saturn? Saturn represents hierarchies. It represents corporations. It represents governments, right? So Saturn-Moon conjunction, he's living in a government or publicly funded housing. You know, the White House is public housing. It truly is. I mean, we pay for that, right? I mean, that's what we pay for. Our tax dollars go to paying for the White House. So when Trump is living there, that's Saturn on his moon. You see how that works? Now, it also indicates that his relationship with his foreign-born wife, again, Moon in Sagittarius, is undergoing levels of stress and pressure with Saturn on the moon. And we saw that. And where did we see that? We saw it when he was traveling, because that's a very Sagittarian kind of activity, right? He's abroad, he's out there, she's wearing black, she's slapping his hand away, she's not very happy, and she's probably not incredibly happy that she has to spend all that time with Ivanka. How could these women not be rivals? They're not that far apart in age. They're opposites astrologically. Ivanka is a Scorpio, Melania is a Taurus, and in same-sex, opposite sign creates rivalry. I know this because this is what Linda Goodman said a long time ago. And so in the same sex, it creates rivalry. Opposite sex, I just have to reframe that. Opposite sex, it creates an interesting bond between two opposite energies that in a male-female, again, I'm coming from the L7 perspective, also known as the square, the L7 perspective, which is the masculine and the feminine in opposition, tend to complement one another. That's how that works. But they're not. They're same sex, so their oppositions create rivalry. How could she not be happy being connected to Ivanka on that trip for such a long period of time? So anyway, we've got the full moon. This will be interesting over the course of the next 24 hours, maybe even today, to see what is revealed about, number one, Trump's relationship with Melania. Number two, what's going on in the White House. Because the White House isn't just where he's living and eating his fast food. Now, Trump doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. We know he doesn't do drugs. I think he's on about 3 prescriptions. I think he's on statins. But Trump likes fast food. You know, Trump likes, things like burgers and Kentucky Fried Chicken and donuts. I mean, you can tell. I mean, he's put a few pounds on. He's also a big steak guy, and he likes his steak cooked all the way through. Trump is a bit of a germaphobe, if you haven't figured that out. Of course, with his first house in Virgo, a lot of Virgo rising people tend to have very strong opinions about their hygiene, or the hygiene in the world around them. It's very, very interesting. Anyway, so we might even see with this moon in Sagittarius, not just what's going on in a living perspective inside the White House, but also from a legal perspective, because Sagittarius rules law. And the full moon shines brightly. It shines brightly on this aspect of law and justice and what's going on inside of that 4th house of Donald J. Trump. Jupiter in Libra finally goes direct. We've had this Venus. I'm just going to talk a little bit about relationship, and then we're going to get into the news. I missed last week in terms of the live stream and getting into the astrological stuff. So I just want to do a little bit of it now. We've had this Venus-Uranus conjunction in Aries, like about 10 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. And boy, it just blew relationships up. That Venus-Uranus conjunction. I wish I would have written about it, because it was a pretty volatile aspect, to be quite honest with you. And a lot of, how shall we say this, reordering of aspects and elements inside a relationship with Aries, and it's now. Well, Venus has moved on, and it's in Taurus, so it theoretically should be a little bit better. And, of course, it'll go into Gemini, and then it'll go crazy and batshit crazy again. All right, so that's kind of the astrological update for where we are now. Let me just do this. So bring this in a little bit. Let me be a little more. There we go. All right, I like how that sounds. There is a chat room here, if I'm not mistaken, and people have been trying to find it. And let me just post a message in the chat room. I'm over on Spreaker Live, and people have been wanting to know how to get into the chat room. So if you go to Spreaker, you'll be able to find me there in the show. Just type in the Friday FARcast, Robert Phoenix Show, and I just so come on over. It's worth trying to find me. A lot of people have questions or want to ask stuff, or back in the good old days of Blog Talk Radio, I've had at times up to 40 people in the chat room. That was a lot of fun. Too bad Blog Talk wasn't better at what they did. No, or else I'd still be over there. So let's get into this. Let's get into the Comey affair. Comeytose. There are a number of different takeaways. Number one, the first takeaway is, who's running the investigation? It's Robert Mueller, Mueller. And do we know who Robert Mueller is? Well, Robert Mueller was the guy who oversaw the 9/11 investigation. So the guy knows where all the bodies are buried. Born August 7th, 1944. He was in the Vietnam War, but he is clearly he is clearly an insider. Clearly an insider. Robert Mueller III is an American lawyer, civil servant. He was the 6th director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, serving from September 4th, 2001. Just 7 days before 9/11. Robert Swan Mueller. Who names their kid Swan? Bizarre. A Republican, he was appointed by President George W. Bush, and his original 10-year term was given a 2-year extension by Barack Obama, so he served a full 12 years, which completes the astrological cycle. So he was born in 1944, the son of Alice C. Truesdale and Robert Swan Mueller II. So it's a ritual. They name their kids Robert Swan. What about his kids? So his father was an executive with DuPont. He's of German, English, and Scottish descent. His paternal great-grandfather was Gustav A. Mueller, a prominent physician in Pittsburgh, whose father, August C. E. Mueller, had immigrated to the United States in 1855 from Pomerania, Germany. On his mother's side, he's a great-grandson of the railroad executive William Truesdale. So he comes from big money. Mueller grew up outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He graduated from St. Paul's School in 1962, where he was captain of the soccer, hockey, and lacrosse teams. He won the Gordon Medal as the school's top athlete. So he's an Apollonian figure. He's also quite tall. So he cuts an impressive figure. He's Apollonian, meaning that he is like the sun king or the sun prince or the sun god. He went on to study. He's a Leo, by the way. August 7th, there's your Apollonian connection. He went on to study at Princeton, where he continued to play lacrosse. He cited his teammate David Spencer Hackett's death in the Vietnam War as an influence on his decision to pursue military service. So he went into the military. Mueller enlisted. Okay, so this is unusual. He enlisted in the Marine Corps in '68, attending Officer Candidate School, Army Ranger School, and Army Jump School. He then served as an officer leading a rifle platoon of the 3rd Marine Division in the Vietnam War. He eventually became aide-de-camp to 3rd Marine Division's commanding general. He received a Bronze Star, 2 Commendation Medals, the Purple Heart, and the Republic of Vietnam Cross of Gallantry. It's a very Leo thing, right? In a lot of ways. So, the Vietnam War is not a war for heroes, but clearly he kind of did that while he was there. Well, he had a long time. This is interesting. He was a lawyer. He got his law degree in pre-1973, and then he worked as a litigator from Pillsbury, Madison, and Sutro in San Francisco. He did that for 3 years, and then he served in the United States Attorney offices. He first worked in the office of the U.S. Attorney, Northern District of California in San Francisco, where he rose to be chief of the criminal division. And in 1982, he moved to Boston to work in the office of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Massachusetts as an assistant United States attorney, where he investigated and prosecuted major financial fraud, terrorism, and public corruption cases, as well as narcotics conspiracies and international money launderers. This is interesting. After serving as partner at the Boston law firm of Hill and Barlow, Mueller returned to government service. In 1989, he served the United States Department of Justice as an assistant to Attorney General Dick Thornburgh. The following year, he took charge of its criminal division. During his tenure, he oversaw prosecutions that included Panamanian leader Manuel Noriega. Okay, so obviously Mueller knows where the bodies are buried. How about this? The Pan Am Flight 103 Lockerbie bombing case and the Gambino crime family boss of John Gotti. He was elected a fellow at the American College of Trial Lawyers. So he's got experience with conspiracy, because Flight 103 is definitely conspiratorial with the bombing. And then also with Noriega, because Noriega, we talked about him. He just recently passed away. We did his chart a few weeks ago. And Noriega was a key player in Iran-Contra. He was a key player in the cocaine trade coming through Panama and into places like Nicaragua, where planes would fly in from Mena, Arkansas, full of weapons, which would aid the Contras, right? Because the Sandinistas were in power. Nicaragua had become communist. And it was the Sandinista government, correct? Yes. And the Contras were basically the forces of American imperialism and corporate self-interest. But of course, they're both on planes, the same, different sides of the same dialectic. But the weapons were coming out of Mena, Arkansas, and those planes were leaving full of cocaine. And this was happening on a weekly basis. Flight in, flight out, flight in, flight out, flight in, flight out. This is all under Bill Clinton's watch. It's all well known. If you haven't found out, if you haven't been hip to the trip, you better figure it out now, because it's a big part of the puzzle piece. Very big part of the puzzle piece. Let me just turn this up a little bit. So what we have here is, through Robert Mueller, somebody who knows a lot. He is an inside guy. He is one of these guys that's somehow managed to maintain his image squeaky clean, all in service of the country. Mueller was nominated for the position of FBI director by George W. Bush on July 5th, 2001. At the time, there were two other candidates, George Terwilliger III and veteran Chicago prosecutor and white-collar crime defense lawyer Dan Webb. But Mueller was always considered the front runner. Yeah, so on September 4th, just 7 days before 9/11, he was named director of the FBI. So here's a guy that knew where all the bodies were buried with Manuel Noriega. He knew what really happened with Pan Am Flight 103. And now he's the guy that's going to steward what happened in 9/11. That's right. After leaving the FBI in 2013, Mueller served a one-year term as consulting professor in the Arthur and Frank Payne Distinguished Lecturer at Stanford University, there's Stanford, where he focused on issues related to cybersecurity in addition to his speaking and teaching roles. Mueller also joined the law firm Wilmer Hale as a partner in its Washington office. Among other roles at the firm, he oversaw the independent investigation into the NFL's conduct surrounding the video that appeared to show NFL player Ray Rice assaulting his fiancée. In January 2016, he was appointed as settlement master in the U.S. consumer litigation over the Volkswagen emissions scandal. So he gets a lot of really high-profile cases. On October 19, 2016, he began an external review of security personnel and management processes and practices at government contractor Booz Allen after an employee was indicted for massive data theft from the NSA. Of course, we know who that employee is. That's Edward Snowden. And then he's got the great task of overseeing this dog and pony show with Comey and Trump. Interesting. So that's going on in the background, and all of the Democrats and all the dyed-in-the-wool rhinos are probably hoping that Robert Swan Mueller III will carry the day and carry their water for them and deliver the coup de grace to Donald Trump and the Trump administration. We'll see what happens, with this full moon on Trump's Saturn, or actually on Trump's moon and Saturn kind of lingering in the background there. Theoretically, there could be some exposure. How much exposure? Well, we'll see. We'll see. And I'm sure we'll get some more of the dog and pony show today. Comey really, there's pros and cons to the whole Comey thing. There are things that Comey did and said that could be taken as, okay, well, this is really not looking good for Trump. And there are other things where he is kind of light in real evidence, like, where are these things? Now, Comey apparently, this is the cat and mouse game that they play. Comey is said to have handed a big fat case file to Mueller over Trump. So we'll see what happens. But it's just a huge distraction, right? It's a huge distraction. And what's it keeping us from? Well, it's keeping us from the fact that the U.S. is basically in an illegal war with Syria. Yep. That's right. That's going on in the background. And every time we have a new terror attack, every time something comes up and somebody's taking responsibility for some manufactured event in the world, there's some credence, false or otherwise, that, hey, we got to go in and take care of business in Syria because it's all coming back to Syria. Or if it's not Syria, it'll be Iran. But this is a big deal in terms of being able to, somehow pin these events to these governments that they want flipped because our pal in the Middle East is really wanting it. Dying for it. No, they don't die for it. Other people die for it. So what else is happening out there in the great big wide world other than Comey, other than the Syrian war sort of lurking in the background? Well, there's another war that's taking place or is about to take place or could take place. Keep your eye on this. This is from a website called CS Globe. The Saudi ultimatum to Qatar: meet these 10 demands in 24 hours or else. Qatar is in the crosshairs. These small little countries like Qatar, the UAE, they are in the crosshairs. In a move reminiscent of the demands made of Serbia by the Austro-Hungarians on the eve of World War I. That war is the turning point war. Saudi Arabia has issued a strict ultimatum to Qatar and given them 24 hours to comply. The list of Saudi demands was allegedly sent to Doha earlier today, and it is being reported that the Qataris have 24 hours to comply. The ultimatum is composed of 10 requirements for the Qatari government to immediately enact. Here they are. Immediate severance of diplomatic relations with Iran. Expulsion of all members of the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas from Qatar. This is totally bizarre. See, this is where countries and cultures reveal their true colors. The House of Saud they're not Arabian. Maybe we'll get into the House of Saud during the second part of the show. Expulsion of all members of the Palestinian. You would think. You see, a long time ago, like in the 1960s, the late 60s, early 70s, there was kind of this theoretical concerted effort in certain parts of the Middle East and North Africa to support the Palestinians and to turn down the ingress or to push back the ingress of the Zionist occupation of Gaza, Palestine. I dated this woman back in the 90s. Shoot, it was the 80s. That's how long ago it was. Wow. About 80. It was around 87. Anyway, she was interesting, very smart, and she showed me these photos of her in Berkeley, and she was like, wearing, burqa and everything, because she was in solidarity with the Palestinian people, and they were decidedly anti-Zionist, and it was like, wow, that's kind of interesting, And that was part of that time. It was coming out of the 70s. And you had people like Vanessa Redgrave who got up there in front of the Oscars, in front of the whole Hollywood community, and denounced the Zionist occupation of Palestine. Boy, she was singing a different tune about 10 years later. Very different tune. But it was a very, I wouldn't call it a strong movement, because there was kind of this fractional sort of relationship. Like Saudi Arabia, obviously, they didn't care. The Jordanians and the Syrians had a very different sort of point of view. They didn't harbor terrorists. They were not, sort of engaged in the, how how do we say this? The revolutionary forces. But people like, Gaddafi was aghast at what had happened to the Palestinians. And Gaddafi was somebody who did harbor people who were engaged in a struggle against the Zionist occupation of Palestine. You remember the Jackal? Carlos the Jackal was a famous terrorist, a famous communist. There's a bunch of Netflix films on Carlos the Jackal. Some of them are interesting. Some are documentary and some are fictional. Anyway, you cut it or slice it, they're interesting. And Carlos the Jackal wound up eventually going to Libya and was part of this whole anti-Zionist trip. And the Egyptians were, anyway, it was a very different time. And so we don't have that now. And you've got Saudi Arabia demanding that the Qataris kick out any connection with Hamas. And there's more. The expulsion of all Muslim Brotherhood members from Qatar. Freezing of all bank accounts of Hamas members and refraining from any deal with them. Expulsion of anti-GCC elements. Ending support for terrorist organizations. Like Saudi Arabia doesn't support terrorist organizations. Stopping interference in Egyptian affairs. Ceasing the broadcast of Al Jazeera news channel. Yeah, that's right. Al Jazeera comes out of Qatar. Pledging that Qatar, will not carry out any actions that contradict the policies of the GCC and adhering to its charter. So it's going to be really difficult for Qatar to fully cut off relations with Iran. Why? Because they both share one of the largest gas reserves on Earth. You see where this is going? If they cut off all cooperation with Iran, it'll be a big deal. It'll be a major blow to the Qatari economy. It could lead to hostilities between Iran and Qatar, so they're being played against one another. Why do I feel like Jared Kushner's head is behind this? The demand by the Saudis concerning Iran are almost impossible. So now what happens? Saudi Arabia has given them 24 hours. So we could see another war that Saudi Arabia would be engaged in, although with Qatar it probably wouldn't be a very long war. They'd probably send jets in and fire missiles and try to take over their half of that gas pipeline. And then what would happen? Well, this is where you engage Iran in a war, an indirect war, because if Saudi Arabia thinks it's all that and decides to go all in on these demands, and if they don't, by the way, if Qatar says we can't do that, Saudi Arabia says, well, too bad, we're coming in. Well, but if they don't, Saudi Arabia's going to look weak. So they go all in. Maybe they've got some new weapons and stuff that they can't wait to test. All those hundreds of billions of dollars of weapons that they bought from the American military-industrial complex. And they go use them. Let's go fire them off. Let's go fire off the new fireworks. So then what does Iran do? You see, you don't go to Iran directly, you go at them indirectly. This is pure evil genius. Because if they get that gas field and Iran can't get their gas out of there with Qatar, and now all of a sudden they have to deal with a Saudi-occupied Qatar, well, where's that going to go? Now, Saudi Arabia is fighting a war on two fronts. They got a war going on in Yemen. And it's a brutal war. The United States is involved in that war as well. It's another dirty little war that we're involved in. So they'll have two wars going on if Qatar can somehow put up a fight. Now, if I'm Qatar, I'm on the phone with Russia. I'm on the phone with China. I'm cutting deals. Cutter's cutting deals. And it's, hey, you want some cheap gas? You want a discount? Yeah, back us up here. Doesn't it just feel like the Saudi Arabians need to be bitch slapped? I mean, somebody needs to just give them a backhand across. They need to lose and lose bad. That's my sense. Right? Doesn't it feel that way? I think so. Let's see if anybody's in the chat room. More volume. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a problem here. How's that? How's that with volume? Are we a little bit better there? Hold on. Let me bring up the levels. If I go too high, then I overmodulate. How's that? Are we happening? Yeah, Robert Mueller is not Robert Mueller in Austin. He's a different Robert Mueller. So the challenge is with... let me type this in here. Hold on. Good. Okay, so we're getting good feedback on the volume. When I was using the other application that Spreaker had, they're just different applications, better volume. Thank you. All right. Hey, welcome to the chat room. We've got some action in there. That is so cool. I need to play a special effect. Thanks, chat room people. All right. Hey, do we have any questions? Anybody want to throw anything out there before I kind of meander over to the next topic of conversation? All right. Thank you for chiming in on the volume side. Thank you. Okay, what else do we have going on here? There's some interesting stuff. So we know that Saudi Arabia now is itching. They're itching. They want. It's not about Qatar. Qatar is it's a small fish. It's about Iran. It's about Iran. It's about Syria, and it's about flipping those governments because they're all part of the one world order. This is what the Rothschilds want. And Trump is, I hate to say it, but Trump is working for the Rothschilds. If you have followed Daniel Estelin's work, he breaks it down pretty clearly that there are basically two economic factions that are trying to run the world. And one model has kind of failed, and their other one they're trying to resurrect and save. And the other model, and the two models are Rockefeller, Soros, and the Rothschilds. And they're kind of, they work in parallel, but they're also sort of working against each other in this dialectic that, of course, we've talked about and is clearly visible through Skull and Bones and all. You would think that if Skull and Bones was just going to influence the world, they'd have one group of people. They would either be conservative or be liberal, but Skull and Bones creates both. Creates both liberals and conservatives so they can play off one another and create this field of chaos and tension and, of course, always having a crisis and resolving the crisis. Speaking of crisis, let me see if I can segue into this. Hold on a second here. I was sent something about, let's see if I can find this. Let me see here, hold on. I hope it's not a video, but let me check this out. I'll pass this on to you. Some of you may have seen this. It's called Crisis Cloud, Dynamic Real-Time Interactive Crisis Solution. This is interesting. This is basically a website and a hub that does simulations and exercises, training and planning, So these are people that stage the drills and find the actors. So it's crisis, and there's never a crisis without ISIS. Crisis Solutions. Let's look at some of their clients. Do we get to see their client base? Let me read you their mission statement, so to speak. Crisis Cloud is cutting-edge web technology that simulates real-world communications during a crisis simulation or crisis exercise. It has been designed in conjunction with our IT specialists to enhance the player experience and the learning of the teams. Get your organization crisis ready with modern and challenging crisis simulation and exercises from Crisis Solutions. The crisis economy, it's Uranus and Aries. Traditional exercises rely on telephones, but in the real world, we now communicate in myriads of ways. Crisis Cloud provides dynamic, interactive web pages, simulated news videos, and social media. To log on, all you need is a broadband connection. Players can take part in the crisis exercise from their offices across the corridor or across continents. Participants in the crisis simulation exercises are provided with password-protected access. Interesting stuff. And we know that reality is mediated. And the whole crisis piece now has become, I guess that might be, again, a Uranus and Aries thing. It's exploded. But I remember, God, this was probably back in the 90s. And I was, doing my research, and it was like, sort of fourth or fifth level awakening for me. And I ran across, it was post 9/11. It was just after 9/11. That's right. It was probably around 2002. And it was a business that was based in the UK where they could basically, let's say, for instance, a nuclear power plant went down, and it was bad news. Well, what this company would do is they would create an alternate news story that would shift the perception away from panic and fear. And this was sort of this fake news creator back in the early 2000s. And, of course, what was broken down and distributed to us as news with 9/11 was fake news. 9/11 is the mother of all fake news events. But anyway, this technology has been going on for a while, and it totally mirrors sort of where we are in this seeming hall of mirrors. I use this word echo chamber from time to time when it comes to alt news and people basically repeating what everybody else talks about. And so now we get into this reverberatory echo chamber. Like, for instance, all the Seth Rich stuff was really controlled. Like, there were only a certain amount of variables that you could talk about with Seth Rich. And outside of that, there were no other variables. So you could go to 9 out of 10 websites or web pages that were devoted to Seth Rich and the disappearance and the conspiracy. And you would find basically the same thing. Isn't it interesting? Because in a lot of ways, they had learned how to control the information. And you could have this kind of wild event that took place where this young man theoretically dies, is shot. And there's a number of different theories about what happened, but they're all in the echo chamber. And I was listening to Jason Whitlock, who's a sportscaster sort of type, and he used the same term, and he was basically talking about LeBron James and the Cavaliers. But this is where we are with sort of how everything. Have you noticed this? This is a really kind of interesting time that we've been in. Maybe this is the Saturn retrograde in Sagittarius, but the truth or the amount of information that we have seems really contained. Really contained. Like, look at the Corey Good David stuff, and look at what Randy's doing and all these other people are doing. But where's the revelation? Where's the ripple effect? Where is that thing that says, oh, hey, look, here's the smoking gun? And I'm not taking David and Corey's side on this. I'm not. Where's the person that comes out and says this is all bullshit, or this is, we've taken these things and these ideas from other sources and we put them together to create a cohesive cosmology. Because that's what David has been doing ever since he's been in front of the camera at Gaia, whether it's the raw material or the disclosure stuff. He's getting it from other places. And David has a unique ability to synthesize it and make it as if it's his own. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. That's what teachers do. Teachers have a wide variety of information and sources at their disposal. And what they do is they recontextualize it so they can make their material fresh or new and present it in a way that there's this transference. So I'm not even slamming like David's methodology. This is what most people do. Do you think Greg Braden has like all these unique and original thoughts, or do you think that somebody who's breaking down symbolism, like Jordan Maxwell, got basically most of his stuff from Manly P. Hall, and Jordan Maxwell spawned about 25,000, 30,000 other people who are basically working off of Jordan Maxwell's material and repackaging it and looking at this and looking at that and creating this tapestry of symbolism and all the stuff that goes along with it. So there's really, in some ways, nothing new. What we do is we repackage and we reformat. And so again, I'm not knocking David for that, because this is what happens in that realm. However, that said, that's what they're doing. They're taking some, Antarctica stuff, and they're taking sort of the deep space stuff and secret space program stuff, and then there's the blue avian kind of thing they created. But to me, it feels like it's synthesized. And in a lot of ways, this is where we are. I think we're hitting this really interesting point of saturation, right? If you go on YouTube and you could find 100, you can find 1,500, 2,000 channels on YouTube, and they're all covering the same thing. And does anybody really cover it in a very unique and different kind of way? I think there are styles of delivery, there are styles of presentation that certain people resonate with. Some people are better communicators. If you go into the interview circuit, how many shows is Robert David Steele on? How many shows is James Fetzer on? They just, how many shows is James Perloff on? They just go from show to show to show to show to show to show. Like, I've listened to Daniel Estulin at least 4 times since his movies come out, and he says the same thing in every broadcast. And I don't blame him. He's got talking points, and they're very interesting talking points. But we're reaching the ceiling. This is what's happening. We're reaching the ceiling, and we're reaching the ceiling of reality, too. It almost feels like we're kind of running out of RAM. Because if what we're doing is we're involved in these crisis creations, which is what they are, false flags, whatever. It's almost as if we've run out of reality. We've got like a hard drive that we've plugged in, and in that hard drive, that external hard drive, we've got these new realities and these fake realities that we're creating. It's a really interesting kind of concept, because there was a certain point in time where we were, evolving organically, and 9/11 put an end to that. 9/11 was a magical occult ritual, which we've gone into at great length. And I believe if you could probably make the link between what happened with the meltdown, the economic meltdown in 2008, not in 2000 in 2000, because we had the April meltdown in 2000, where the NASDAQ went to shit, and people lost a ton of money in internet stocks. That was kind of big, actually, to be honest with you. My grandmother lost money. Anyway, But I think that some of the documents, some of the hardcore documents around some of these lending practices that would later surface in 2008 were connected to 9/11 and maybe even Building 7 in 9/11, that there were records in both of these buildings that ultimately needed to be destroyed. So then we have another ripple with the economic crisis in 2008. So we were moving along this kind of organic timeline, which came out of the disruption of the Kennedy timeline. And that goes all the way to 9/11, right? And then everything gets changed again. And it's almost as if post 9/11 we ran out of RAM. And now everything is about this creation of kind of this surreal, unreal, Matrix-like environment. I mean, we could even go as far as to talk about sports and how most sporting events at a high level are faked. Super Bowls, faked. World Series, faked. NBA championships last year with the Warriors, the NBA inserted itself and they changed the outcome of that series. Faked. Fights, faked. Tennis matches. Ask Emily Moore, faked. Betting scandals in tennis matches. And that's just in sports alone. And then we have all these other events, all these ridiculous false flags, from Sandy Hook to 9/11 to the Boston Marathon to Roanoke, Virginia, to Elliot Rodger in Santa Barbara, to any number of events that took place in Europe. And even the amount of, let's take the Anders Breivik, the guy who went nuts in Sweden, right? Even that Anders Breivik event, that guy couldn't have done all those things by himself. If indeed he went off the res, he couldn't have done all those things by himself. There's just no way he could have killed all those kids and all those people at that amount, in that short of amount of time. So we begin to question the nature of reality in these events. Look at the stock market, manipulated. Gold, the price of gold, manipulated. The social construct of this, widening sort of gulf between races and socioeconomic classes, manipulated. Totally manipulated. So you put it all together, right? And what is reality? What is reality? And how are we supposed to have real relationships? And I'm as guilty as anybody, when it comes to trying to understand and navigate the nature of relationships. I'm 56 years old. I live alone. And I've got a son, and, I'm a wanderer. I've never really fully, gelled with this notion of relationship, and that's just me. But I think there are other people in the world who, do work and try and commit and do all these things that are really important for relationship. But I think it's hard to have even substantial relationships in a world where everything is mediated and most of it is completely synthetic. What kind of relationships can you have in that kind of a world? It's very difficult. It's extremely difficult. I'll give you another example of this sort of mediation of reality. When California passed the same-sex marriage law, well, first of all, they shot it down. California did not want same-sex marriage. Okay? They didn't want it. They had a vote. They voted. And it was like, too bad, you lost here. And the LGBTQ XYZ advocates, they were prepared for that. because they had judges in the waiting. They had judges in the wings that could overrule these state decisions. And that's exactly what happened in California. And one of the things that the parents were concerned about was, we don't want you bringing your lifestyle choice. Okay, now some people say, well, you can't choose to be gay. Well, maybe that's the case. But you can choose whether or not you want to get married. And trust me, from the other side of the fence, on the L7 side, it's not all what it's cracked up to be. But anyway, it's one of these social pivot moments and became sort of the new rallying cry for the new civil rights and all that stuff. But anyway, one of the things that was said, well, don't worry about it. Don't worry, we're not going to bring it into the schools. Really? The curriculum has changed. There are new books. There are new. It's like, yet again, here we go. It's like reality gets massaged. It gets manipulated. Oh, don't worry about it. We just want what everybody else gets to have. Well, that's not the case. Like, I've been watching these YouTube videos of transgender drag queens reading books to kids in schools. Like, that's a really good idea. I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe I'm a little closed-minded here. But it starts off with, no, we're not going to get any schools. To next thing you know, you've got, what was that movie when Sally met, what's that guy's name? Let me go to the chat room. What is it? When Sally met Eddie or... Oh, hold on a second. I've lost them. When Sally met Harry. Okay. When Sally met Harry. So it would be when Harry became Sally. I'm sorry. But this is what's happened, right? It's like, no, don't worry about it. We just want what everybody else wants. And the next thing you know, you've got a guy with a beard and big boobs who looks like Carmen Miranda reading The Wizard of Oz to kids, or Pete the Cat. You know what I mean? It's just weird. So, but it is another iteration of how we literally, I think, are running out of RAM. Right? Look at Hollywood. Hollywood, where are they the most successful now? They're the most successful with sequels, right? Sequels or remakes. There are no more original ideas. It's really hard to have original ideas. To go into the original ideal realm, you've got to go off into Ray Kurzweil land. And even those ideas are starting to become a little redundant to some extent. Or if not redundant, they're certainly becoming, more mainstream in a lot of ways. So even Hollywood is showing us that we're running out of RAM because they don't make new movies, and the movies they're not that original. It's all about the sequel, and it's all about the remake. So where are we as we run out of social and historical RAM, and we try to reinvent the world around us? It happens through fiction. It happens through alternate realities that are essentially given to us. And it's very difficult. And it's really, really difficult to navigate through that and retain your humanity and retain your soul, because the world has become patently synthetic. I mean, we can even make a case for GMOs and chemtrails and all the other stuff that comes down and into our bodies and changes our molecular structure. That's all synthetic. And very difficult to stay real and connected. One of the most challenging moments that we have in our present and in our future is all about our connection with our soul and our humanity. Speaking of the transgender community or the LGBTQZY community, One of my Facebook friends is Morgan Russell, who's a really brilliant original thinker and one of the early players in Mondo 2000. And Morgan and Are You Serious have a nice little page over on Facebook. It's the Mondo Project. Mondo was a magazine I was involved with for about 3 years, from 1997 to about almost 2000. And Morgan and RU were there at the golden days. I was there in the, I don't know, I wouldn't even call it the copper days, more like the tin days. But anyway, they're trying to get this celebration. You know, this is the anniversary of the Summer of Love, right? This is the big 50. 50 years ago was the Summer of Love. Think about that. It's the Summer of Love, and boy, you know, unless you're talking about this synthetic love is love and all is love and, you know, Ariana Grande and Justin Bieber and, you know, this other bullshit, you can't have a real, it's not, and you know what, the thing about the Summer of Love is it was palpable. I mean, there was like a rent in the sky, and people were switched on. You know, of course, there was a lot of really good LSD at the time, too, but they were switched. There was a big wave of consciousness. And I don't care if, again, the 60s were simulated, because we know from the fact that, yes, there were artists and writers and musicians on the CIA payroll. That's a fact, Jack. That's true. You have MKUltra operating in the background. You have Operation Bluebird and all these other things going on to really, you know, affect our consciousness. But the consciousness wave was there. But there's none of that now. You know, there's no sense that we're like really expanding and we're having this kind of rippling moment at a social level. It's just not there. But anyway, they have these guys who have been doing these events in San Francisco, like the Bean and all these other things, and they can't get permits. They can't get permits for the 50th anniversary to have kind of like a Summer of Love reunion thing. They can't get it from the city. And it's interesting. It's like, well, why is that? So I left a comment on Morgan's page. Well, if they had invited the LGBTQ community and bolted it to the Summer of Love thing, I guarantee you they get their permits. San Francisco's changed, and not necessarily for the better. I used to love living there. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun in your late 20s living in San Francisco, or your early 30s. But it's changed a great deal. All right, it's 1:22 here in South Central Texas. You're listening to the Friday FARcast. I have to take a very, very, very quick break because I have to allow my son entrance into my home. So I'm just going to, I don't have any music, and I apologize for that. I sincerely apologize for it. But what I will do is, now maybe I can just tee up some music. Let's see if we can do this. It probably won't be very loud, and it won't be for very long. But I just need to have a quick little break here. You know, let's see what I got. Let's see what I have that could be remotely interesting. I'll tell you what, I'm going to play one of my tunes. Let's do that. Here we go. Let me play one of my tunes, and I'll just kind of crank up the volume to the best of my ability. I'll try and find a short one, because I need to go do this. My kid, hold on a second. Let me just hold on. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. I promise. I promise. What do we got? Let's see. God, I've got so many readings. Whew. Let's see. Yes, I know it's dead air. I'm still here. But this time I could have just gone to the door and and unlocked it, and it would have been, let's do this. This is kind of a fun thing. This is just a quick little spot from Bendix.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having stayed at the Hotel Atlantis. We hope you've enjoyed your visit with us 20 late days. A resort hotel under the sea. We at the Bendix Corporation believe it will happen, and before too many tomorrows go by. Just as you now drive around the countryside in the family car, one day you'll sightsee around the ocean floor in an amazing aquacopter. And the family car is in for some pretty big changes too. Imagine just tapping the floorboard for stop and go, or electronic push-button driving. The tomorrow people of Bendix are helping to make these things possible, and more in the areas of national defense, aviation, space, oceanics, automotive, and manufacturing. To search, to discover, to develop, to erase all boundaries of space and thought. This is Bendix, the tomorrow people.
That break in my reality was brought to you by the Bendix Corporation. All right, we're back, and just trying to bring this all back together as we run out of RAM for reality. Let's check in with the chat room. I'll have what she's having. There we go. Thanks, James. Harry met Sally. You know, I've never seen that movie all the way through. There are a bunch of movies in the 80s that I did not see. I have never seen Top Gun. I have never seen A Few Good Men. There's a bunch. I've got a lot of gaps, and they usually include Tom Cruise in my 80s moviedom. All right, let's see what else is out there in the big wide world. Let's see what else. Oh, so Eric Trump had an epic rant. What is this about? It's going to be YouTube. Let me just check this out. Let's see if we can tee this up here. Hold on. I'm going to try to... I'll do this on a bigger system. Let's see if we can listen to what... Oh, here it goes. Here he goes. Hold on.
Well, Eric Trump just shocked his father and the nation with what he said in an epic rant that is now being viral across the web. We'll show you in a moment here some background from Paris Liberty News, who reports that Eric Trump was so flaming mad in the Sean Hannity show. These Democrats are not even people. I pretty much agree. They are not people. They are subhuman. Okay, they have years old. Said he has never seen hatred like this. And again, it's all of them. They keep saying bookends. All they do is hate. But the other one cutting his heads off, destroying, downtown.
It was every second of every day.
I've never seen hate like this. I mean, to me, they're not people. It's so sad. Immorality's just gone. Morals have flown out the window. We deserve so much better than this as a country. Right. And, it's so sad. You see the Democratic Party, they're imploding. They have no message. You see the head of the DNC, who is a total whack job. There's no leadership there. And so what do? They become obstructionists because they have no message of their own. They have no solid candidates of their own. They lost the election when they spent 7 times the amount of money that my father spent. They have no message, so what do they try and do? They try and obstruct a great man. They try and obstruct his family. They come after us viciously.
Eric, I gotta tell you
truly horrible.
So there you go. That's not really a huge rant.
They have no message.
It's not a huge rant, but it's interesting, right? Jared Kushner and Eric Trump are both Capricorns, separated by 4 days. How about that? Eric Trump born January 6th, Jared Kushner January 10th. So Trump's got this Capricorn coterie. Hey, you want to know an interesting fact here? A little factoid. Check this out. What do Theresa May, Emmanuel Macron, the guy from Holland, the Italian Prime Minister, Angela Merkel. What do they all have in common? Does anybody know? None of them have kids. No kids, no grandkids. They have no investment in the future. I know that's hard to say, because I know there are going to be people who will probably hear this who do not have children, and this is not an affront or an attack on any childless parent. But I will say that when you have a children, it just changes things. Changes your investment in the future, changes your investment in the present. You're not the same person. There's levels of sacrifice. You're thinking generationally, right? And there are people who will say, well, I don't have a child, but I'm really close to my nephew. And, it's just like, it's almost like where I'm his mom, or it's almost like I'm his dad. And it's not quite the same. So if you have a series of nations who don't have any children, what are they basing their decision making on? See, when there's children, there's an investment, right? Like, even if you're out there on a limb and you're saying, well, this isn't right, this isn't right, and you stand up for something, maybe you're a whistleblower, or maybe you're just somebody who's trying to tell the truth, and if you've got children, you can be compromised. I mean, that's the other thing, right? That's the other side of it all. So they don't have any children. It's pretty trippy, to be honest with you. Let me see, Justin Trudeau, does he have any kids? Nope. No, he's got a wife, Sophie. It's another Capricorn, December 25th. Oh, Christmas baby. But no children. And he does have a very, very strong affection for Barack Obama. If you ever see them together close up, boy, they have no problem figuring out who had what for lunch. Am I right? Very close. Extremely close. Yeah. And they had a little lunch in Montreal. They dined at the trendy Liverpool house. The pair have a storied bromance, which began when Mr. Trudeau visited the White House for a state dinner last year. Mr. Trudeau, who once called Mr. Obama his sibling, tweeted that they discussed getting young people to take action in their communities, which basically means go raise some hell. I'm just kidding. I don't want to be that cynical. No. They have a name. It's called Trubama. Did you know that? Wow. Is the U.S. experiencing Trudeau mania? Oh, boy. Interesting. Do you want to know what they ate? Sounded like they did not hold back. Restaurant owner David McMillan told the CBC the pair seemed jovial at dinner, which included oysters, shrimp, halibut, steak, spaghetti lobster, and strawberry shortcake. The restaurant is a favorite of Mr. Trudeau's, who is from Montreal and represents the district of Papineau. Sounds like a pretty good dinner. It'd be great just to go out to dinner and just, I'll have that. No problem. Okay, well, I think we've come to the end of today's festivities with the Friday FARcast. as we move into that emotionally expansive state of Jupiter in Libra going direct and the full moon in the sign of Sagittarius. Real quick, I want to bring attention to something. There is a Facebook friend and somebody who used to listen to me quite a bit over on Blog Talk. And she's an artist, and she's been living in Mexico. And let me get her name up here. Hold on. Let me just... Facebook is taking a while as I load it up. Just give me 1 second here. Let me see. Hold on. I think she sent me a message. Let me just see if I can find this message. I try to do this when people are going through something physically. But let me see if I can find it for her here. By the way, I've had weird stuff been happening to me on YouTube with the videos. Some people claim that they've been unsubscribed from my account. You may want to check that. Other people have been telling me that my... okay, here we go. That they have not been able to find my videos on YouTube and have to go into... here she is. She's... okay. She might even be listening. Okay, hold on a second here. All right, so my Facebook friend, and she's been a listener for a while. Her name is Anna Victoria Danielle. Anna Victoria Danielle. That's D-E capital A-E-N-I-L-E. She's having a kind of a serious bout with cancer, and she has a GoFundMe page. I'm going to put this link in the chat room here. She's actually a really, really good person, a very talented artist, and she's got a long fight ahead of her for money and to get well. So I'm going to throw this into the chat link. And maybe if you feel, Trudeau has 3 kids. Okay, thank you, Aquarius M. I didn't see that on the Wikipedia page. I normally, here we go. Just put that in the chat room. You know, if you have $10, $15 you want to send, $20, you know, she's just like the rest of us, an artist, you know, trying to get by and get through and get enough money to deal with her issues around cancer. So Trudeau has 3 kids. Sorry, didn't say that on Wikipedia. Darren Williams sent me a tweet here. So he put up his take on the UK election. I'll get to that. And let's see what else we have here. Yeah, so I just put that up. With in the chat room for. Okay, so the UK general election results updated. Looks like Theresa May got 49%, 48.9%. Jeremy Corbyn got 40%. And then you have the Scottish Labour Party, Liberal Democrat, Democratic Unionist Party. Well, it looks like Theresa May. Interesting. They've got a hung parliament. I have not been, I'm going to be honest with you. I've not been following the UK election. So they've got a hung parliament. And this is what CNN says about a hung parliament. It says Theresa May has failed to win a parliamentary majority in the UK election, leaving the country with what's known as a hung parliament. May's Conservative Party needed to win 326 of the 650 seats in the UK Parliament to govern with a full majority. Instead, now she's being forced to consider teaming up with a minor party. So what is exactly a hung parliament? The expression comes from the term hung jury, when jurors cannot decide on a verdict and a retrial is needed. But in UK elections, this result does not automatically trigger another election. Instead, the party with the largest number of seats, in this case, it looks like the Conservatives will attempt to form a coalition government with one of the smaller parties. The second largest party, which would be Labour, can also start parallel talks to form a coalition of its own in an effort to reach the magic number 326. If no one can reach a deal, a party could try to form a minority government, but it would struggle to pass laws in Parliament. There will be a sense of urgency to the coalition talks to form a new British government because the Brexit clock is ticking. Formal negotiations between the British government and the EU are due to start on June 19th, just 10 days away. Without a stable government in place, it will be impossible to start Brexit talks, and they will have to be delayed. Go figure. Doesn't it feel like Brexit, like true Brexit, will never happen? You know, and there are people that are already on the books saying that it doesn't really matter because a lot of the laws that the EU were following and enforcing, you know, their EU states to follow had already been absorbed into the British Constitution, or the bylaws of England. So they grafted a lot of those laws that the EU was enforcing that all the other countries would follow. I think probably because they would face a Brexit moment like that. I'll make sure to put a link up for Anna Victoria also in the description if this goes to YouTube. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in England. What does Darren have to say? Let's just bring this up here. Let's see if I get you the highlights. Let's see. The following version is public, therefore share with your friends on Facebook. Darren loves him some Mel Brooks. He's basically, what he's doing is he's comparing the election to The Producers, which is a farce. It's actually a very funny movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. The original version with Gene Hackman and Zero Mostel. It's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Anyway, you can find that over on Darren Williams' Facebook page. You can get his take on the election. So they've got a scramble now. They got to put something together, and it just feels like Brexit is being derailed kind of at every single turn. And clearly, whatever they were trying to work on pre-election with these terror games in England did not turn the tide enough so that Theresa May and the Conservative Party of England would carry the day. So if that was their intent, it certainly didn't work. All right, why don't we give this a wrap here, because I'm going to go back into my my father mode here real soon. Well, I hope the last hour and 25 minutes of your life was worthwhile, and you got something out of this. And I thank everybody out there who listens. You know, I may not have a ton of people that listen, but man, I'm sure grateful that you do, because it gives me context and allows me to help keep my world sane and up on things, and to sort of distill and synthesize what's happening in the world. And if we do it together and share it together, we have a greater sense of not being alone on this planet in this rapidly running out of RAM matrix. So have a fantastic weekend, and use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step in what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to the Friday FARcast.